You feel the world shift beneath your feet the moment the whisper comes. They've replaced you. Not with someone better, not with someone kinder, but with someone unbreakable. You realize too late that power is not taken. It is conceded by silence, by the half-formed apology you swallowed, by every time you let respect remain unclaimed. In that instant of betrayal, the world stops honoring your presence. That fracture, raw and unfiltered, is the doorway. There was a time you believed respect was earned through sacrifice, through kindness lent like a borrowed coat. You understood loyalty as currency, spent until it vanished. And yet, when the price of your devotion came due, there was no repayment, only indifference. They didn't apologize because they were sorry. They apologized because you didn't react. That truth, delivered in a crimson moment, chills the blood. Listen, vulnerability is a luxury you can't afford. In the maw of power, it is exploited, dissected, weaponized. A paradox unfolds only when you strip yourself of the need to be liked. Do you become magnetic? Not through charm, but through absence of weakness. When you stop defending yourself, they started doubting themselves. That doubt is where power lives. Pause. Feel the emptiness where approval once begged at your hands. Let it burn. Sit with that ache until you recognize it as the spark of transformation. This journey isn't for the faint. It is for those who crave command over their own fate, who refuse the crumbs of validation. They called you cold because they couldn't control you anymore. Imagine, as you listen in the dark, a covenant forming between you and truth. It says, never again will you kneel for acknowledgement. Never again will you beg for a seat at a table that never valued your place. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, replace that silence with a vow to become a force that commands presence, not through volume, but through unassailable stillness. If you're tired of being overlooked, subscribe now and claim that power in every episode. Comment if you're ready to step beyond the puppet's strings. They watched you tremble at their edge, never noticing how quiet your fear grew. In the beginning, you believed control was a matter of persuasion, soft words, measured nods, the art of appearing agreeable. But every concession you made carved a hollow where your conviction should have stood. They didn't fear your words. They feared your silence. Imagine them leaning in, expecting hesitation, and finding only a still wall. You recall the conversation when they questioned your loyalty, dissecting your motives with predatory calm. You bristled, but you softened, offering explanations you didn't owe. They smiled, not in empathy, but in victory. That's when you understood. Power is conceded by those who believe you need their permission. Your apology was a gift, your justification, a surrender flag. What if, instead, you had stared back with unreadable eyes, refusing the very premise of their accusation? There is a razor's edge between decision and doubt. Most people hover on it, afraid to step. But when you choose detachment, you tilt the balance. They called you ruthless, as if it were an insult. But ruthlessness is simply clarity under pressure. It demands one thing: the unwavering refusal to tolerate disrespect. When they pushed, you did not yield. You did not explain. You existed beyond their script. And in that moment, narrative power shifted. Feel the hunger in your throat when the conversation ends with no resolution, with no apology, only the lingering echo of your words unsaid. That hunger is the raw material of transformation. Do not fill it with frantic justifications or desperate reconciliations. Channel it into stillness. Watch as they circle, trying to provoke a reaction, hunting for the vulnerability you no longer possess. And when they find none, their confidence dissolves, scattering like dust. They told you that compassion was your strength. They lied. Compassion, when weaponized by expectation, becomes your weakness. Real power is absence of need. If you have to say you're valuable, you're not. Value is the silent backdrop against which your actions speak. Let your presence be the question to which they have no answer. Let them wonder what alchemy forged your calm. Your reflection in the mirror is not the person you were yesterday. It is someone reborn in quiet fury. That mirror shows the absence of apology lines etched into your face. It shows the space you have carved by refusing to chase approval. Imagine stepping into a room, and no one dares to speak above a whisper, because they feel the weight of your gaze, not your volume. That is the gravity of unspoken command. Power does not demand witness, it only requires permission, and you finally have revoked yours. The crowd falls silent when you enter, not because you entertain them, but because they sense the unyielding axis at your core. They remember the version of you who pleaded, who conceded every slight. Now, you are a fortress of restraint. They tremble at the idea of testing your walls. Stillness is the deadliest weapon in your arsenal. A pause that lingers longer than necessary is a blade sliding between ribs. Use it sparingly, but do not shy from its edge. Let them hang in that pregnant silence, their minds racing for a foothold. There is none. You have evacuated every psychological trap. They walk away unsettled, confused, haunted by your detachment. They stood before you, voices raised like torches, desperate to break the silence you wielded. In that moment, you realized confrontation is not collision, it's the absence of concession. While they hurled their accusations, you offered no rebuttal. Your eyes, fixed and indifferent, became their undoing. They shouted over you until they ran out of breath, then wondered why the gust of emptiness felt colder than any blow. Your detachment is not apathy. It is a surgical incision at the heart of expectation. When they expected guilt, you delivered nothing. When they sought reaction, you offered only the stillness of a lake at dawn, untroubled by their ripples. That stillness is a challenge. Bring me your worst. I will not bend. Watch them flail for purchase on the smooth surface of your calm. That is where true power resides beyond the reach of impulse. Remember the last time someone tried to rattle you with guilt. They said, "You don't care about us anymore." You felt the old itch, the urge to apologize, to soothe the pain that wasn't yours to heal. Instead, you held your breath and let the words hang like vultures in the air. They circled, confused, because they could not find the body of your contrition. In that confusion lies your sovereignty. Power thrives in absence. The less you give, the more they demand, until they collapse under the weight of their own longing. When you withdrew your need for connection, the mirror shattered. They saw reflection of themselves chasing echoes. That's when they learned to fear silence. The silence that mocks their anguish. Feel the luxury of having no need. Your calendar is empty of obligations to their illusions. Your mind is free from the prison of their approval. That freedom sings in low tones, unheard by those still chanting for validation. They mistake your restraint for superiority. Good. Let them mistake it. Their misjudgment fuels their desperation. In every interaction, there is a gravity pull. Most bodies fall toward the mass of approval, orbiting around praise and acceptance. You have shifted your center of mass. Now, they fall toward your orbit, unsettled by the unfamiliar trajectory. They gravity check themselves, wary of proximity. You are the hidden sun they cannot touch but are bound to circle. They will test the boundaries. They will probe for softness. When the test comes, you do not flinch. You do not concede. You do not flinch again. With each unanswered prompt, they feel the emptiness swell until they are drowning in the weight of their own questions. You remain the unyielding shore. Recall the last apology you swallowed. It tasted like regret, burning at the back of your throat. That regret was a poison administered by your own need to placate. Now, you gargle with cold resolve. Feel it burn away the scar tissue of every past humiliation, leaving only raw, unfiltered presence. They call it arrogance. Let them call it what they must. Arrogance is a label applied by those who cannot fathom absence of submission. In truth, your confidence is neither boisterous nor loud. It is the silent certainty that your retreat is the fiercest advance. Imagine the world stripped of your need, no more apologies for things you did not do, no more explanations for things you did not feel. In that void, you stand unbound. They circle like predators unsure whether to attack or flee. That hesitation is your blade. Watch their eyes flicker for a reaction that never comes. Watch their words fumble for purchase. And when they realize they cannot provoke you, they resent you. Perfect. Resentment is a flame you stoke from afar, warming only yourself. In the aftermath of every confrontation, you do not console the wounded parts of yourself. You do not look for validation in the ruins. You simply step forward, carrying the corpse of expectation behind you. Leave it to rot in their minds. A warning to those who would test your boundaries again. This path is lonely. You will lose the companions bound by expectation. They will call you cold, unkind, detached. But kindness is a commodity. Detachment is an asset. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be immutable. Feel the ache of isolation as a compass pointing true north. It shows you where the landmines lie, every attempt to placate, every moment you considered retreat. That ache is your guide. Trust it without mercy. In the echo of empty rooms, you will hear your own voice for the first time low, unbroken, resonant with the certainty of someone who will not kneel again. Let that voice become the anthem for every unspoken boundary you hold. They expected your silence to break, anticipated the moment you'd scramble for words. But your stillness widened, becoming a chasm they could not cross. In that expanse, they glimpsed the shape of your new self, a being unbound by their narratives. They tried to fill that void with noise, gossip, innuendo, careless laughter at your expense. Each barb struck nothing but the empty air of your resolve, ricocheting back to wound them instead. Notice how they cling to stories about you, as if by defining you they can cage you. Let them weave their tales. Their words are but echoes against the stone walls of your indifference. When you cease to react, they lose their plot. Their script dissolves, leaving them stranded in a scene without direction. That is your triumph, to starve their story of your participation until it collapses on itself. Power demands sacrifice. It asks you to give up the habits that once felt like comfort, explaining yourself, justifying decisions, seeking nods of approval. In their place, you adopt the ritual of restraint. With every withheld explanation, you forge a link in the chain that binds you to your autonomy. You become an architect drafting blueprints of influence, not with words, but with deliberate absence. Recall the last favor you did out of obligation, the kindness you offered because you feared their judgment. Did it earn their gratitude? Number. It earned their expectation. That expectation became a ball and chain, weighing you into compliance. Now, you let obligation die in the sterile light of your restraint. Watch as they scramble, deprived of the feasts they once devoured at your expense. They will speak of betrayal when you refuse their summons. They will brand your indifference as cruelty. But cruelty is the garb of those who cannot wield mercy without weakness. Your indifference is neither kind nor cruel. It simply is an absolute state that defies their emotional economy. They will mistake it for punishment when it is merely the dismantling of your own enslavement. Feel the surge of power when you walk away from a conversation that demands too much of you. You step into the air, charged with their unspoken questions. and each unanswered demand becomes a monument to your sovereignty. Let them linger in that charged atmosphere, deprived of closure. Their discomfort is the echo of your command. They once thought they controlled you by questioning your motives. Now, your motives are unreadable. They probe the dark folds of your intention and find only reflection, nothing to grasp. In that reflection, they see the truth they never dared speak. Fear. Fear of a force they cannot predict, cannot bend, cannot own. In your reflection, study the lines etched by every moment you swallowed your rage, forfeited your pride. Let them remind you of the cost of concession. Then, let them fade as you sharpen the contours of your next move. You are a weapon honed by every insult and every silence you maintained. Power speaks through absence of reaction more eloquently than any speech. A pause that stretches beyond their endurance is a statement. I will not dance to your tune. They may try to shorten that pause with provocation, loud gestures, dramatized grievances, but you do not flinch. Your inaction becomes the pulse they cannot measure. Listen to the uneasy silence that follows your departure from the fray. Notice how conversations shift when your name is mentioned. They lower their voices, as if you might hear their scrutiny. That hush is your legacy, a field cleared of all but your presence. They rearrange their strategies in your absence, because only in that void do they contemplate true power. Forgo the temptation to torture them with direct confrontation. Your weapon is subtler, the slow creep of their uncertainty. Each unanswered text, each unread message, is a brick removed from the fortress of their assumptions about you. Let them dwell in that void as the blueprint of your impenetrability. They will attempt reconciliation, offering half-hearted apologies designed to lure you back into the cycle of validation. You will recognize these for what they are, attempts to restore the bargain they once broke. When they appear, you do not respond. The door remains closed. Your silence is the final verdict. Feel the fierce pride that rises when you resist the urge to re-engage. That pride is not vanity. It is acknowledgement of your own worth, beyond the ledger of their judgments. It is the recognition that your value is intrinsic, not transactional. They learned that lesson too late. In the void where their words once held sway, you plant seeds of intention. Every decision you make now is irrigated by the waters of detachment. You cultivate influence by choosing only what aligns with your unspoken code. They see the gardens of your ascent and feel the sting of exclusion. Power is not volume. It is the quiet domain you inhabit when the crowd's roar has faded. Embrace that domain. Let its boundaries be defined by your refusal to participate in petty dramas. It is there, in that silent kingdom, that you reign unchallenged. They sharpened their knives and whispered behind your back, certain that your isolation would fracture your will. Yet every whisper only stiffened your spine. You leaned into the solitude like a strategist reviewing the battlefield alone before dawn. In that quiet appraisal, you discovered the contours of their hiding places, the lies they told themselves to justify control. And you prepared yourself, not with noise, but with the gravity born of someone who no longer needs an audience. They flung the relics of past grievances at you, old arguments, childhood hurts, forgotten debts. Each accusation meant to drag you back into the mire of explanation. Instead, you received their barbs as if they were autumn leaves skittering across a cliff's edge. They fell away into nothing. Your refusal to gather them became your message. I discard your pain. I reject your narrative. In that refusal, they saw your power, and it burned them. There was a time when you measured love with the yardstick of sacrifice. You gave until you bled, until the wound amused their mercy. That ended when you realized your absence of need was the truest form of attachment. They could chase your indifference, but they could not own your fidelity. Every unreturned call became a testament. You belonged only to yourself. That liberation is a silent quake beneath the ground they thought unshakable. They attempted leverage through guilt, framing your boundaries as betrayals. "How can you walk away?" they cried. The question hung in the air, a witness to every apology you once swallowed. Now, you walked away steadily, step by step, until your silhouette was nothing more than a dark shape on the horizon of their regrets. They remained standing in the wreckage of expectations you refused to carry. Power is the art of selective engagement. You choose when to speak, when to glance, when to vanish. Each choice chisels away the scaffolding of their assumptions. Let them scramble to fill the space you leave behind. It is theirs to inhabit, not yours. Watch them twist themselves into knots, trying to predict the next move of someone who moves only on their own terms. That unpredictability is a hurricane in their orderly lives. You remember the comfort of agreement, of nodding, until your head rattled with assent. That comfort was a cell, gilded but confining. Now, you dismiss agreement as casually as brushing dust from a sleeve. Your head remains still. Your thoughts remain your own. They stare at you, desperate for a sign that you still play by their rules. You offer no sign. In that void, they collapse their kingdom of assumptions. They presented you with ultimatums. It's me or your independence. You chose independence and watched them dissolve into anger. Anger is the sound of a wound that refuses to heal on their timeline. Let it rage. It fuels itself in circles, while you stand apart, untouched. When their anger subsides, they face the aftermath of their own making, a chasm between who you were and who you have become. In the echo of their retreat, you map your new territory. It is not defined by their approval or by their permission. It is defined by your sovereign code, to speak only when necessary, to move only with intention, to care only on your own terms. That code is invisible to them, yet its force bends their world around it. They orbit your gravity, uncertain whether to approach or flee. They will mourn the version of you that once knelt. They will whisper that you have lost your warmth, your empathy, your soul. Let them whisper. Warmth is warmth, only when wielded for their comfort. Empathy is empathy, only when it serves their needs. Your soul, vast, unmappable, uncommodified, belongs to no one but you. In that belonging lies your immovable center. Now, as you stand on the edge of every encounter, you carry the silent thunder of someone unbound. Your stare is a question they cannot answer. What drives you if not their approval? They avert their eyes, unsettled by the interrogation. That avoidance is your proof that you have become the question they cannot bear. In their silence, you listen to the echo of your own assent. Now, whenever they approach you with feigned warmth, you match their tone with measured detachment, as though their words are a script you've already seen. They lean in, expecting a reaction, and you give them the echo of your own calm. They step back, unsettled, because silence is heavier than any answer. They send invitations dripping with nostalgia, reminders of shared history meant to erode your resolve. You read the message once, then archive it into oblivion. The act speaks louder than any declaration. You have no interest in being defined by yesterday's bombs. In that unread notification, you reclaim the power you loaned away. You once believed that transparency would end suspicion, that by laying your cards bare, you'd force honesty in return. Instead, they studied your playbook, learned every tell. Now, you conceal your intentions behind a mask of impenetrable stillness. Let them guess at your next move. Their uncertainty is currency you spend sparingly. They bragged about their loyalty, as though it were an immutable bond. They were joined to you by threads of expectation. When you cut those threads, they flailed, unsure how to stand. Your departure from the loom left them unraveling in the void. You remain the loom, steady, silent, constructing your own tapestry out of absence. Feel the absence in every handshake that never comes, and every greeting left unreturned. That absence is the echo chamber of your autonomy. It broadcasts a single message. You are not theirs to command. They murmur about your pride, but pride is the fortress that holds back the tide of their demands. In moments of confrontation, they rely on familiar tactics: guilt, sympathy, the illusion of crisis. You meet them with detached acknowledgement, a single nod, unaccompanied by explanation. That nod is a pivot point. They wait for context that never comes. Their need for context betrays their weakness. Your withholding of it seals their defeat. They speak of compromise as though it were the highest virtue. In their world, compromise is the unit of currency. You trade in absence instead. Every withheld concession is a deposit into the vault of your self-respect. They cannot penetrate that vault, no matter how they batter it with pleas and threats. Your silhouette in their mind has morphed into an outline they cannot fill. They draw maps to your boundaries, but the map is blank. In that blankness lies the ultimate leverage. You are unknowable. Let them trace the edges of your territory until their fingers trace air. They will test you with emergencies designed to provoke urgency. A crisis is nothing more than a timed device to spring your compartmentalized empathy. When they dial your number in panic, you let it ring until they realize you will not be their safety net. Your refusal to catch them mid-fall is the final demonstration of your resolve. There was a time you colored inside the lines they drew, shading your desires into the contours of their preferences. That coloring book is closed. Now you paint only in the void they left behind, strokes of intention they cannot erase. Every brushstroke is a refusal to play by their aesthetic. Feel the tension when they realize you no longer own their definitions of love and loyalty. They circle you like moths around a cold flame, drawn to the light yet seared by the absence of heat. That paradox is your signature, a beacon they yearn to touch but cannot. They will sow rumors to isolate you further, whispering that you are unreachable, unfeeling, untouchable. Let them. Rumors are feathers in a storm. They scatter, leaving only the gale of your own presence. When the wind dies, their half-truths lie flattened on the ground, powerless without an audience. Imagine watching their efforts to reintegrate you into the familiar dance. Each step they propose, each hand they extend. You remain seated, observing the choreography of their desperation. Inaction becomes your performance, more dramatic than any soliloquy, more devastating than any monologue. When they demand explanations, ask them instead what it feels like to chase a shadow. Their silence will be your answer. In that void, you exercise the only control left, the choice to remain unexposed. They learn, abruptly, that you will not illuminate your darkness for anyone. Every echo of their attempts to provoke you ricochets back, fracturing their confidence. In that fracture, new possibilities emerge, possibilities you cultivate with the patience of a chess master. You set the board, move without haste, and watch them scramble to anticipate a strategy they can never read. Now, as their voices fade into the background of your own unwavering rhythm, you stand at the pinnacle of detachment. You hold no malice, only the quiet certainty of someone who has relinquished the need for permission. In that certainty, you find a dominion no one can challenge. In the hush that follows every confrontation, you discover the final truth. Power is not an object to be seized, but a condition you embody. Every moment you refrained from explanation, every silence you held against the storm of their demands, each became a brick in the citadel of your resolve. There is no grand gesture here, only the subtle shift of gravity as you step away from their orbit, untethered. They speak of your absence as a wound, but wounds heal, and in their healing, you cement your dominion. Now, the world beyond your fortress is tinted by the memory of your unyielding stillness. They whisper about the person you were, unaware that person died the moment you refused to bow. You carry no cruelty, only the absolute refusal to trade fragments of yourself for the illusion of connection. In that refusal, you become inevitable. Let them chase shadows. You exist in substance. If you felt the weight of their expectations, subscribe and stand among the unbroken. Comment if you refuse to ever kneel again.